Okay, so welcome to the podcast. And today is the first time I'm joined with a guest on the podcast, which is John Malora. And John's got a very interesting background and I'm going to let him talk about that because he'll do it far better than I can. And also the topic that he'll be talking about, I think, is really important because I've spoken about how to handle pressure. And we all deal with that. It's something most of us are dealing with every day. And I'm going to let John talk about his approach and, in fact, how he coaches and teaches people. So I'm going to hand over to you, John, before I steal too much of your thunder. And perhaps if you start maybe with a little bit of background, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to be here, Graham. And yeah, so my background is not typical, and I think most people would agree, especially folks that have been in the entrepreneur journey or life just in general. It's never a straight linear line, right? Like we might think it's point A to point B, and there's all sorts of dips and trips and spins around. Yeah, so that pretty much describes my journey. My goal throughout my entire life was always to join the U.S. military. And found out senior year of high school I was not able to do that due to some health things, right. And so ended up going to college. It was kind of aimless. Guidance counselor told me to be an engineer because I was good at math and science. I said, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. Okay, So spent 4 years at university. Really struggled, but eventually got my engineering degree. And long story short, took a job as a rock climbing instructor in college, and that's actually what ended up getting me the job in the U.S. space program.
Brilliant.
I got hired on as a test engineer right out of college in 2000 and worked on the Mars missions that would land in 2003, the MER Mars rovers.
Amazing, wow.
And yeah, the rock climbing gig is actually what got me in there. Again, not because I had stellar grades, but because the gentleman who ran all the testing for these landing systems was former U.S. Special Forces.
Oh, wow.
And I eventually asked him one time, I said, why did you hire me? I said, I'm not 4.0, 3.5 GPA.
Yeah.
He said, I don't need another egghead around here. He said, I need someone that I can send out into the field wherever we are from Antarctica to England doing test operations and isn't going to get anybody killed.
Yeah,
and he said,
definitely a plus. Yeah.
So that's how I wound up working in the U.S. Space and Defense Program for 15 years. And then through a series of events, with my own personal growth stemming from a tragedy about halfway through my career to the company being sold, ended up leaving engineering after 15 years.
Right.
And turning my side hustle of photography, which you and I share in common, into my full-time gig. So I was a commercial photographer for a number of years, and then eventually, especially after COVID, realized that people's confidence was just so in the gutter. They wouldn't even want to get in front of the camera for these shoots that they paid lots of money for.
Yeah.
So I wound up coaching them, things I'd learned through counseling and mentors and my own coaches.
Yeah.
To get them in front of the camera, and ended up thinking like maybe this is a new way to start serving people, and opportunities came for me to speak, and they took off, and I capitalized on them, and here we are now. I do coaching and speaking full time, and the photography is back to being a hobby.
I think there's actually a couple of points in there, and they relate to COVID. One of them is the service, and this is something that is a real theme through when I'm talking about salespeople. We're here to serve our clients. We're here to solve. We're problem solvers.
Right.
Our interactions are not about making the next sale. They're not about, how can I get this guy to buy something? It's going in with curiosity and with a service mindset. And the other thing I want to throw in there, because photography is my other passion, wildlife photography. Yeah. And during COVID, I put together just a bunch of challenges you could do around your home. Because I think what's really important, and this ties back into what we're going to talk to, is having an outlet. And I think it's really important to have a creative outlet that's different to your work. Because I think just when everything's going a little bit pear-shaped and you're really stressed about it all, if you've got somewhere else to go that's separate and engages that creativity part, just from a mental health perspective, I think it's very, very grounding. And that to me is really important when you're handling the big stuff. You need somebody to go and get grounded. So photography for me is one of those things, and that turned into another passion, and obviously with you. So anyway, that was just something I just wanted to dive in there and share.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you mentioned there, again, I don't want to move past that because that's really important, especially, and it gets so overlooked now, is giving ourselves space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just think, like, humans are not designed to operate 24/7.
No.
That's why we send robots to Mars.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
people.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that space, our brain never gets the chance to decompress. So we might think if we're having a challenging problem at work or home or whatever it is, the natural reaction a lot of times is to dig in and work harder.
Yeah.
But that can sometimes become a double-edged sword if we don't have the space to let ourselves expand.
Yeah.
We're not designed for that. And that's why people always say, I had the best idea. Where? In the shower. Because you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
You just got to stop digging sometimes, climb out of the hole, go for a walk.
Yeah, that's step one, put the shovel down.
Exactly, yeah. And then you get a different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually baked into any major faith system across the world from throughout the course of human history.
Yeah.
Christianity and Judaism have like their Sabbaths built in.
Yeah.
Muslim has their prayer time and their holy times.
Yeah.
The meditations of Hinduism, like, it's because humans need a break. Like,
absolutely.
To operate our...
Yeah, I mean, and I think if you honor what we are and the way we're, how we've evolved, what we are as, I shoot wildlife, so to me we're primates, which isn't as complimentary, but essentially that's what we are. And you kind of...
That's some people I've met.
Yeah, well, Well, I won't go there, I think. That'd be another podcast. Maybe a private one. It's about honoring what we are. And also I think what's important, so for a lot of people it's family, it's friends, it's those kind of things. And again, when we get stuck into work too much, those relationships are the ones that are probably most likely to sustain us, and they tend to be the first ones that go out the door because we're just stressed and we're going to work those extra hours. We don't see wife, kids, all of that kind of stuff. So, that's stopping and slowing things down and walking away. And I'm going to lead into what you talk about in your website about essentially clarity being the key thing. And do you want to maybe expand on that? Talk about what that means to you and how that's worked with the people, because you've done a lot of coaching on this, and how does that work with those people?
Yeah, clarity is one of those things that sounds simple, but if we get down to it, it's not easy to do. And but it's so important to take the time to be very clear. And I saw this in test operations. Like for space and defense program, our team's job was to go test and make sure the thing did what it was supposed to do before we put on a fighter pilot or crashed into Mars, right? And what I saw so often was people would give us the specification and it wouldn't be specific. It'd be like, make sure it does something kind of like this. It's like, well, wait a minute, time out. Like, kind of like this isn't going to cut it when you're screaming through the atmosphere at Mach whatever you are. Like, we need to, and if we don't know the exact number, like, then let's put a range to it. We'll test to it and see if it meets spec. And so often in our life, we don't take the time to be very clear about what we want the outcome to be. And because it's so easy, and I see this all the time with the leaders that I coach, they get so hung up on the details of like the step by step to tell their team to do that they spend so much time on that. What they really need to do as a leader is spend the time on what is the actual objective? What does success mean? And then as the leader, trust your team to go figure out how to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing on leadership, is that because your job as a leader is to provide direction. There's a great phrase that a mentor that I have is, and that's start with the end in mind. And once you communicate what that end is, hopefully you're hiring people who are really smart and much smarter than you in the areas they're responsible for. So exactly as you say, and then you empower them to do the things that they're good at doing, and you don't start fiddling around and micromanaging with something you probably don't really understand that well anyway, or potentially. So I think that's really important, that aspect of not only giving a clear endpoint where you want to go, but empowering people along the way and making them feel empowered, making them feel heard. I think that was the other, when I got into management, that was a very, luckily I picked that up really fast.
That absolutely. And as far as like leaders and teams go, like obviously trust is foundational to that. And trust doesn't just happen. So as leaders, we need to be very clear about what the objective is. We need to support the teams. We need to provide direction.
Yeah.
That builds the trust with the team. And then the team's responsibility is to take action.
Absolutely.
On whatever it is to get to the objective. The team's job is to maintain an alignment with the overall vision that has been clearly communicated. And then I always tell people, I'm like, it's not the leader's job to make decisions. And they're like, no, it's the leader's job to make decisions. I'm like, the vision, yes. But the decisions is actually the responsibility of the team, because if the team can stay in alignment, take action, and make decisions, that's going to build the trust that the leader has in the team. And then the trust builds, and those are high-functioning teams whenever it's structured like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just thinking, and I'm thinking of this from the perspective of leaders who are listening, and also people who are part of a team who are listening. What are there sort of key takeaways that you've learned with your experience and your interactions with people that are perhaps things that people in leadership should be doing? The big thing, and the things that you've coached people on, the things they tend not to do that cause problems. So that would be both the leaders and the people who are within a team working with a leader who perhaps isn't functioning as well. What would be as a pretty easy thing to answer? I'll just throw that at you. What would you like to offer there to just help those people?
Yeah. So teams that have a leader that aren't, maybe leading like they should. I think your question. Yeah, that's a bit of a sticky wicket.
It is for sure. Yeah, and there's not too much you can do about it often as well. You're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, well, unless the leader has the posture of curiosity and not judgment, which is something I talk a lot about. Like, whether you're a leader or team, like having that posture of curiosity.
Yeah.
And instead of saying like to the leader, hey, you did this wrong.
Yeah.
Here's what you should be doing. It's like, hey, who would help us be even more productive, bring in more profit, make more sales calls, land more clients, is if, insert wherever the leader is lacking.
Yeah.
To give that feedback. Yeah. And always tying it back, especially in the business world, always tying it back to the core goal of the business.
Absolutely.
And so it gets tied back more to emotional things.
Yeah.
And emotional intelligence is extremely important. I'm not negating that, but in the business realm, the way things get justified is tying it back to the return on investment, the ROI.
Yeah.
Even emotional intelligence and personnel and human resources and all that, at the end of the day, that all gets tied back to a metric. And if you can show a positive influence on business, that's how things can a lot of times get leverage and get support, especially from higher up management.
Yeah. And I think, too, with the managers, if you're lucky, you've got a strong manager. And to me, strong people are the ones that are open. They tend to be curious. They're open to feedback. Sure. It's the weaker managers tend to be more fearful. They're defensive. And any suggestion they take as an attack. And, yeah, that's a really tough one if you're in that situation, because those are the teams that are going to struggle.
Right.
And I'm not even sure what I would suggest to somebody in that situation, because really it's hard to change it. And then you've got to kind of make a call for yourself, I think, whether this is something you want to continue with for your own health and the things we were talking about earlier, or, if you can't come up with a way of handling it. So I don't think there's a magic bullet for that one, but I don't know if you have any suggestions in that area, or if it's just a case of, doing your best.
Yeah, that is a difficult position to be in, and that's when it becomes very important to be able to separate the data from the drama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is it truly a leader that Yeah, is this truly a leader that has no interest in growth and just has like their sights set on the corner office by any means necessary and manipulative, narcissistic? Like, you need to be honest with yourself. Like, is that truly what that person is, or am I casting like, a lot of feelings and emotions on it,
Yeah.
and it's clouding, or is the person just a different communicator than I?
Yeah, and it's one of the things I'm throwing. I'm actually a DISC practitioner, so behavioral profiling, and that is something that I found very interesting because I know with just my type, and I'm absolutely textbook for mine. I'm a high D, if you know DISC, and I had somebody working for me a few years ago now, and I'm very vague about getting things done. I'd say, we need to do this, this, and this. And she just wanted a lot more detail. And it really used to irritate me until I realized she's coming at me from a different perspective. She was really committed to helping me, but the method of communication that she needed was different to the method of communication I was using. And I think this also, and that's a very good point that you've made there. You're just understanding the different ways we tend to communicate, and that we're not all the same, most definitely.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point.
Yeah. Communication. A lot of people think communication is all about how to get your message across, and that's not wrong. But the goal of communication is to figure out how the person that you're talking to will best receive your message.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like listening on a radio and being off on a slightly different frequency, and and you can't understand what's wrong because your frequency looks fine, but they actually are on a different one, and that's where the problems come. So
yeah, that's why DISC is a great assessment, and a lot of times I've used that, especially with clients that maybe had trouble with communicating with people.
Yeah,
like they're like, man, everybody's just a jerk, and I'm like, well, there's a common denominator here.
The everybody's kind of a giveaway.
Yeah. Whenever you use those absolute terms, my radar goes
That's right,
up. Everybody, all, never, all the time.
Yeah, interesting. I was just spotted a common denominator here.
Yeah. That's why a lot of times I'll lean in with the Enneagram.
Okay, yeah.
Which is communication, archetypes. Some people you need to be very direct with.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you need to understand that. Like someone might be like, hey, Mike, steps 1 through 8, you missed 7, fix it.
Yeah.
And they appreciate that. They're like, got it. And if you walked up to that same person and be like, hey, how you doing today? Hey, Mike, I noticed that. And they'd be like, my goodness, will you just get to the point?
Exactly, yeah.
But other people who are direct like that, they'd be a puddle of goo crying on the carpet for 2 weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. And
and you have to understand that, especially as a leader. How do they receive communication best?
Yeah, and I think when you start to understand that, it's like light bulbs flash and pennies drop and all the other things happen. You suddenly realize why there are issues with certain people that so far, no matter how hard you've tried, you just can't seem to connect with them. And often it will come down to that. So we're going to keep this fairly short because these podcasts tend to be quite short. But just for anybody who'd like to know more about what you do, I'm going to put your link to your website in the description for the podcast. But is there anything you'd like to say to anybody who's, maybe, I was going to say driving in their car, but that might isn't the best time to start making notes.
Yeah, when you get somewhere safe and pulled over.
Yeah, pull over first.
Yeah, you go to johnmalora.com/free stuff. There's a link there to my free Navigators Masterclass. And what it does is it gives you 3 powerful questions to get you out of this mindset of judgment of yourself and others.
Yeah.
And to switch into curiosity, and also helps you get out of autopilot, which is where I see a lot of people just stuck in, and build awareness. So instead of being on autopilot and judgmental, or aware and judgmental, they can become aware and curious about things, because that's what I call having a seeker's mindset. So if you go to johnmalora.com/free stuff, the Navigators Masterclass is right there for you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think as soon as you take the pressure off, no matter how you do it, it's like you can breathe again. And as we were sort of saying at the start, it makes such a huge difference to just managing what a lot of us have stressful situations now that we're in changing times, which doesn't help. Things that were stable, not so stable anymore. So I think this is a very relevant and very timely topic. And Yeah, I'll have that link is in the description. So please go take a look. John, I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And
right.
maybe we should do this again sometime.
All right, Graham. Thanks for your time, man. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. If you found this podcast useful and hopefully it's got you thinking, please sign up to my mailing list. There's a link in the description where you can just sign up and I'll keep you informed of what's going on. There's also a link to a free 1-hour webinar. It's an on-demand webinar and I'll take you through 3 things you can do right now to improve your sales confidence, and that includes handling objections and closing the sale. So please check out the links and please join the mailing list, and I'll speak to you next time.